So now I want to talk a little bit about checking user input, because we've talked about this, and even some of you have encountered this as you pursued your different projects. A lot of you bumped up against this when you were working on your calculator. And that is that users can input just about anything. We've talked about this. Whatever you can imagine the worst possible thing a user could input into your program, somebody's going to do that at some point. Okay? Whatever's going to crash your program or confuse the program, users are going to figure out a way to put that in there. So we haven't really figured out much of a way to check and see what it is that users are putting in, right? If I say put in a number and somebody types O-N-E to spell one, I haven't really figured out yet how to say to that user, hey, wait a minute, that's not going to work. So what we have are what are called string classification methods. Just a long-winded way of saying they are string methods that tell us certain things about strings. For example, this one, string dot is numeric. Take a guess at what this one tells us. If it's a number, yeah, that's a great guess, yeah. More specifically, what it's going to tell us is every character in this a number? Okay, is every character in this string a number? So, what do you think would happen if I have a string that says 123.56 and I run it against is numeric? Does it return true or false? False, exactly, because the period is not a number. Even though the whole string, if you take the whole string as a whole, it's a number. But the period inside that string is not a number. And it's going to look at each individual character. And if each individual character is not numeric, it returns false. These will always return true or false, which makes them very useful in our if statements, right? So that would be true. This would be false. This would be true. Now, if you read that fast enough, it looks like it's asking, is it aluminum? But it's not. It's asking, what do you think it's asking? Alphanumeric, meaning, is it an alphabetic character or is it numeric? They can be upper or lowercase, doesn't matter. We've got is upper. And as we talked about, this one would come out as false because this is gonna kick it out. So here are the string classification methods in a table. You can easily find all of this information online, but there are certain things that are included in is numeric, is digit, is decimal. These all are very similar from our perspective because most of the time we're not going to use some of the edge cases like exponents or fractions or superscripts. We could say is decimal. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier. That's just your basic decimal digits 0 through 9. So that's the most strict one. Okay. Only letters, only digits. Is it white space? Okay, these are the things that get taken out by strip. Okay. All lowercase, all uppercase. Is title case, so does each word start with an uppercase? And only ASCII characters, probably not useful for you because that's pretty much only what we're going to be dealing with. It would exclude things like Unicode, which is often used to represent other languages. So this would be a quick and dirty way to find out if it's written encoded in basic English, but that's not even reliable for that. So is ASCII is probably a one that we're not going to make use of in this class, but a lot of these other ones will be useful. So if I wanted to use a string classification method, let's say I have a string that looks like this, and I wanted to find out if it's a number. Okay, so I would use it in this case. Notice that is numeric, right? It's a string method, so I have to use a string as the context. So strtest dot is numeric. I still include parentheses, even though there's nothing that goes in there. It does not take arguments, but I still have to include the parentheses. So just something to park in your brain. You'll get reminded by PyCharm as soon as you forget. Okay, and then we have a colon. And so if that comes back true, it prints it's a number. But here's maybe a better way to use this, right? So if I have str1 and I say 12, and I say str2 is 10. Okay, so those are both strings. They both are what we would consider numeric strings. So if I say, if str1 is digit, well, that's what it was supposed to say, digit, there we go. And I'm going to say, and str2 is digit. Remember, the Boolean requires that both of these are true. So if this is true and this is true, meaning if either one of them is false, it turns it false. Then I can do this, right? What's it going to print when I run this code? That is a wonderful guess, but what did I forget to do? If I want to do addition with these two things, what did I forget? Turn them into integers. I just added two strings together, which just smushes the strings together. So if I say int 1 equals int str1 like this, and int 2, and then I add those together, and let's say else print both have to be numbers. Okay, so right now, if I run this, it will add them together. Because now that I've changed them to integers, it does the actual math on them instead of smushing the strings together. But if I say, turn this one into something that's not a valid number, then it says both have to be numbers. So now, if I allowed a user to enter those things, it protects my program from crashing because now they can't enter anything that's going to cause my program to crash. So I could say input, enter a number, just like this. And I could say input, enter another number. There we go. So now I can say enter a number, 100, 1630, adds them together, enter a number. Okay, so now that's a little tricky, right? I could say both have to be integers, but here's another way. If I use replace on this, I'm going to show you this again later because you'll probably forget about it. But if I take that, if I use replace to replace the period in that string with an empty string, it just deletes that period, and then I can check to see if everything else is digits. Then I'm good to go with the addition. So that's a little workaround for figuring out if a decimal is actually a valid number that we can be adding. So these classification methods are really useful in terms of building programs that are a little bit more like robust and protect our users from themselves. Because the last thing we want to do is have our program crash. When we're doing a basic thing where they enter 2 digits and then it adds them up, like that's not gonna really piss somebody off. But can you imagine if every time you were in Microsoft Word and you typed a certain character on your keyboard, that Word just would crash on you without warning, and so you get halfway through a term paper and you put an exclamation point and Word just crashes? Like, that's annoying, or even more than annoying, because then you're wasting people's time. So I'm showing you something on a small scale that you say, well, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But if you take that on a bigger scale with a bigger program that requires more user input, or where the data is really valuable, then we have a real problem. So string classification methods are a way of preemptively looking to see if something is going to work before we try to do it, mathematically speaking.